Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds in action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, and even UFC. Head to betonline.ag today and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is proud to partner with Illumination Brewing for another season of crafting State IPA, the perfect tailgate and game day beer for Penn State football fans. State IPA is available now, but it won't last much longer. Check in with your local beer distributor, grocery store, plus select bars and restaurants. Visit illuminationbrewing.com/beer/state-IPA to learn more. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Also, State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today.
Penn State comes up short against Oregon in the 2024 Big Ten Championship game by a score of 45-37 in Indianapolis. I am extremely proud of the way that this Penn State football team played. Yes, a lot of points given up. That Oregon team, in my opinion, is the most complete team in college football. That is just a team, Justin, that you talk about player evaluation all the time. Oregon simply has better players and more of them. That was my biggest takeaway from this game. What did you think?
Explosive players, man. Oregon is explosive. That is a talented team. But I will say, leaving that game, I'm proud, like you said, proud of the guys, the way they played. It was a appealing game. It was aesthetically pleasing. Even like some of the rough interceptions from Drew, I like how he played. Like just overall, play tighter on the back end. But like the way that this team played this Big Ten championship, there's no moral victories. We're in competitive sports. You got to continue to win. That's probably the best team in the country going into the playoffs. You have to feel good about your chances on any given Saturday or any given Monday for that chance, right? It was going to be on the championships, typically on a Monday, because the ball bounces. I feel like we can play with them. That's what I always talk about. The styles make the matchups in the different match in the football games or in boxing matches. But this is a pure example that we came out, we were able to move the ball, doing some different things, had some explosive plays. Got to limit those explosive plays that we gave up on the defensive side. But yeah, it sucks to lose the Big Ten championship, but if it's a very good game going into the playoffs, I feel like.
And now it's just wait and see, because the committee, I feel, has been so inconsistent in the way that they've evaluated certain teams. It's been a case-by-case basis. Sometimes, if your resume and your strength of schedule and all those elements actually line up what they're thinking, they'll stick with that. But we've seen how they favored Alabama, and Alabama 9-3, some bad losses. They're trying to get the brand in. So it's like, hey, if this is about money and ratings and eyeballs, that's fine. But just Don't give me these flimsy BS excuses as to why you're putting teams in there. And now you have to look at this and wonder if Penn State will be penalized for this. Now, Texas lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game. Will Texas be penalized by that? You could understand Georgia jumping up a little bit and Texas potentially falling just because of the loss, but not a major reshuffling. But for instance, Penn State's at number 3. I believe at number 4, it's Notre Dame. Do you have an idle Notre Dame who has a loss on their schedule to Northern Illinois jump Penn State, who lost by 1 possession to Ohio State, who was number 4 in the country at the time, and a loss in the Big Ten championship game by 1 possession to the now number 1 team in the country? There's too many things that could play out here in terms of where Penn State's going to get seated within the brackets to really lose sleep over it. And this is going to fully come out Sunday afternoon. We're going to see what that all looks like. So I don't even want to sweat about that too much, Justin, but it is kind of this flaw in this system and this committee is that, oh yeah, this is what gets you in, but then we can kind of fudge everything else the way we want it. And it's imperfect. It's definitely flawed.
Well, I think when you're thinking of picking the brand, it's the fan base, right? Like who's going to actually go mobilize and go to these different cities from those different standpoints? Because I would say from the brand or the eye test, I think this Big Ten championship game helped Penn State. They seem to be more explosive. It was an exciting game. Obviously they're known to play good defense, but it wasn't that great today. But just across the board, they looked like a team that should have been playing with Oregon. So I say that to say Oregon's clearly the number 1. And if the committee and everyone that's watching the games are looking like, hey, this could have bounced any other way in Penn State, it could have took it to the overtime, or they could have easily won. It solidifies, I feel, Penn State in that top 5, 6, moving in just in terms of wherever people are judging us in just terms of strength of schedule and things of that nature, because we play like that against anybody. I think we play against like that against Ohio State. We beat Ohio State pretty handily. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So it was a good turnout. Again, no moral victories, but the team should feel encouraged going into the playoffs.
Let's sift through this game a little bit. I was a little perplexed as to why Penn State came out pass happy for the first quarter and a half of this game. I felt coming into this game, Penn State needed to establish the run. You kind of had a feeling of the way Oregon would try to take away Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren was still effective, but you could see how frequently they were doubling Tyler Warren. And it was a struggle for other pass catchers for Penn State, other wide receivers specifically for Penn State, to really make a difference in the passing attack. Were you surprised to see Penn State lean so far in the direction of the pass for that first quarter and a half?
Not necessarily. No, I think they were given what the defense was giving up, and they were making plays. All right, like I think on the outside, we still gotta figure that out, right? Tyler Warren, he showed up like he always does. Drew again played a pretty good game, and regardless of the interceptions. But no, Oregon was coming out and really handling the defensive run game in a good way. So I think they were taking what the defense was giving them from that standpoint. But they got back to the run game. I remember I forget, it was maybe midway in the third quarter, but Penn State was out rushing Oregon at that time, even though Oregon had some explosive plays at the beginning of the game.
Penn State was out rushing Oregon at the half. However, by the
Maybe
time
at the half, yeah,
they started committing to the run game by like midway through the second quarter. But at that point, Oregon was already up 28-10. So that's why I bring that up, is that the tempo of Oregon was very clear from jump. And you could see there's the video of Kobe King vomiting during a goal line stand. Like, this Penn State defense was gassed. And it's not the fault of anybody on the staff necessarily. It's just, when you play, and you know this far better than I do, when you play tempo you play against a tempo offense for 4 quarters, eventually you wear down. And you could see how late in the game that paid dividends for the Ducks.
No, you could definitely see it, right? The throwing up on the field is always like a nightmare situation.
Good indicator. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because you can't. Once it starts flow, you get the hiccups. It's a wrap, right? No, because you can't do anything. You can't really sub out on defense, and like they had fast, explosive players. That's another thing I'm saying. Like not being able to be in that trigger mode when you're playing on your heels a little bit and reacting to fast players, it does change the tempo of the game because you're used to maybe playing at 75, 80%, right? 80 or 75, 80 miles per hour. And then when you're playing against guys that are, 90 at 100 and you have to rev up, it just your body reacts different. But again, if that's the litmus test of the number one team in the country, be encouraged moving forward. Be very encouraged.
It's encouraging. Again, I personally feel like if you come out and establish the run early, it might have helped you a little bit in terms of staying within striking distance. But outside of that, you got your points. And I felt going into this game, this was going to be a defensive struggle. I think the line was 49, depending on where you looked, especially according to our friends at Bet Online. And the way that Penn State had played defensively against Ohio State, the way that Wisconsin had played Oregon tough in Madison, I felt if Penn State was able to duplicate that performance, you could keep the score down and potentially duke this thing out. But this turned into a shootout pretty darn quick. And Penn State's running game, I think, was averaging about 8.5 yards per carry by the end of the second quarter. Katron Allen played his butt off in this game. Hats off to Katron Allen, and this offensive line really did a very nice job with an extremely talented Oregon defensive line. But Justin, to my eyes, it seemed like because Penn State was so effective running the ball, the true talent of that defensive line is to be disruptive and especially rush the passer. With that kind of taken away, Drew doing a nice job getting rid of the ball, especially they're under duress and a lot of points extending the play. It allowed Penn State to do what they did on the ground there. What did you see from Penn State's offensive line?
I saw a resilient group. To be completely honest, I think, like you said, coming down having established from the pass game first, and then coming down and kind of establishing the run game. I think they did a pretty solid job throughout the night. And again, kudos to Drew Aller and just, I mean, I guess, and his improvement, just moving around in the pocket, extending plays, and making those splash plays or flashing in a space where, like, okay, those are the type of plays and moments that you need from a quarterback that can take you to the next level. And I mean, I think he did it consistently today. And I mean, take away a few of those interceptions. So I think it was a combo. It's good for the offensive line, but I also think Drew being able to evade some of the pressures helped out the offensive line, and how I think I looked at their performance as well.
The touchdown pass by Drew Aller to Harrison Wallace with 3:41 to go in the fourth quarter was just tremendous. He has a guy literally pulling him. He's off platform. He throws that kind of sidearm. He zips it in with the corner and the safety, kind of sandwiching Harrison Wallace there in the end zone. Trey had himself an up and down day in terms of the statistics for him catching the football. It was 4 for 59 and a touchdown. Not a bad day, but 7 targets. Fair amount of drops on either side, both Oregon and Penn State in this game. But, outside of Trey Wallace, there was really no wide receiver that truly made a difference in this game. It was the Tyler Warren show once again, 7 for 84 on 12 total targets. Nick Singleton got involved, 4 for 43 and a touchdown. Katron Allen, 3 for 15. Amari Evans had that one beautiful post route, and that it was just very well schemed up because they caught them in man across the board to cover 0, and you just ran Tyler Warren at the safety and had him run a 10-yard out. All of a sudden, Omari Evans just hit a post. The corner was playing too far to the boundary, and you have a wide open touchdown pass. So that was just an excellent scheme call there by Kotelnicki. So, again, it comes back to Penn State needs to get these threats in here at wide receiver. This is something I think we're going to harp on until you start to see alphas in that wide receiver room. I looked at the crop Penn State just got in National Signing Day, and I was like, boy, there's 40 more tight ends. It's like, it's the message going to get through that it's like, this is great, this is cool, you're adding to the aces, that's fine, but please get us somebody at wide receiver that can make a difference.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. We'll see what happens in this transfer portal season, but noted. I think you're correct.
I'm not saying anything we haven't said now for
That's kind of what that's kind of what I'm saying. I don't want to sound like a broken record. I know I've been pretty hard on the receivers.
Drew Aller finishes the day 20 of 39, 226 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That completion percentage dropping. We've seen him be in tough games this year, and that completion percentage has hovered around 60, 65%, even as high as 75%, even in tough games. And that percentage point, 50%, it does harken back to Drew of 2023. The big difference for me with Drew Aller is that last year, 2023, Drew Aller looked shell-shocked. This year's Drew Aller, this game specifically, he did have to run around and extend plays quite a bit. And then, frankly, again, I come back to the wide receiver issue is that you just saw Oregon able to lock up Penn State's wide receivers. Outside of anybody not named Tyler Warren, they did a pretty good job. The interception by Drew at the end of the game, that was a rare mistake in decision-making of where to go with the football. And Drew knew it. You could see it on his face when they shot him there on the sidelines, because if you look at that play as they zoomed out, you had Tyler Warren on a crossing route, and his man was behind him. So all Drew had to do was take a look down there, and maybe he was thinking he had something. Maybe he didn't see the safety over the top or something like that. I'm not sure what you saw in that play, but Drew was kicking himself after the fact. That last pick basically to seal the game.
Yeah, man. Again, you want to kick yourself a little bit. The guy has to make a play. He went for it. I think it's a shot that you want to have back a little bit on 1st and 10, but you want to have it back. It's a 50-50 ball, right? Like, so it's 50-50. He can go one way. He makes that play. It's like, oh my God, look at this great play. The fact that he took the shot, that's kind of where my brain goes to. It's not the best. It wasn't like a terrible throw per se. The DB made a hell of a play. Like, so kudos to Oregon. Like, they weren't any slappies. They those dudes were out there playing. And like every time you left a play out there to be made, they made them. So kudos to him. I think that was actually even a better defensive back play than it was a poor quarterback play.
To be fair, Drew overthrew Trey Wallace on that play, and Trey did everything possible to try and go knock the ball down. But to your point, defensive back made an outstanding play. The first interception, I couldn't believe that the ball had been intercepted. I forget which quarter that had occurred, but it looked like it just kind of popped into the defensive back's hands. Dinkins cut and wasn't expecting the ball, and it just got intercepted, and the guy nearly ran it in for a pick six. It was just, you're right. Oregon secondary made the plays when they had to.
I mean, I'll say it all the time. We'll see it in the playoffs. It's going to come down to players making plays, but the rhythmic flow of the game and how they were able to still attack was commendable. We have to have more. Have to have more of those 50-50 balls and more of those one-on-one plays on the outside. This was the best team, number one team in the country. I feel like we played them well, and we can play with them. We put up a one possession game to lose, and I'm not sure if we roll the ball out 10 times, who comes out on top, like based on just watching that game. So I mean, that feels good.
You lost the turnover battle, 2 interceptions, as we mentioned. Oregon took care of the football in that department, no turnovers. You lost the penalty battle, and this was a sticking point for a lot of fans watching this game, and I completely understand it. Penn State, 5 penalties for 65 yards. Oregon, 3 for 24. There were the 2 personal fouls in the first half, the face mask penalties that extended drives for Oregon, allowed Oregon to jump out there early, and then you kind of got one back where that was a Harmon on Ioane. I forget, I think he hands to the face was the penalty. That extended the drive 15 yards, gave Penn State some life, and ultimately Penn State went down and scored after that. So and there were a lot of people on social media talking about where are the holding calls. There's the completion to Amari Evans that for some reason never got reviewed, but because Penn State wanted to go tempo, you blew past any opportunity to be able to review it. James Franklin was furious. Did you see something from the officiating tonight that stuck out to you?
Not necessarily. I mean, officiating is officiating, especially when you get into these championship type of situations. Try not to leave it and put it in their hands, but I feel like they were somewhat consistent throughout the day.
So the officiating turnovers, I mean, these were the two things that we talked about, is that Penn State was going to have to get a takeaway, and that, like, we thought, hey, Dylan Gabriel might throw you one. And there were enough tipped passes, dropped passes, bobbled passes that Penn State had a chance. Ball got put on the turf a couple of times, had a chance to come away with a turnover, but you just weren't able to do that. And you get into a shootout with Oregon. And it was a point that I raised when we did the preview episode for this. And I understand your point that, Penn State playing in the Big Ten championship game in the past, yes, they had been able to have success in that game and obviously beat Wisconsin back in 2016. But in big games in James Franklin's tenure, one possession games, there are some decisions that can come back and bite you. And I look at the 2-point conversion attempt in, where was it? The fourth quarter after Catron's rushing touchdown. I'm trying to recall exactly when it occurred. I believe that was where it was. But basically Penn State going for 2, and then Oregon jumps out 45-30. So now you're in a situation where you have to get 2 touchdowns and go for 2 both times, or at least go for 1 and then try and go for 2 on one of them. I mean, I did not understand why, with the potential to make it just a 7-point game, you go for 2 so early in the fourth quarter. The cop-out analytical argument from James Franklin, whether it be a low-scoring game or a high-scoring game, historically from him, is points are at a premium. I don't understand that decision whatsoever. Keep it to a 7-point game. Even if Oregon had jumped out by another 7, then, oh, great. You don't put yourself in a position where you have to go for 2 to keep the game alive. And that way, if you'd kept kicking 1-point PATs, you actually would have put yourself in a situation where maybe very late in the game, final minutes, if Penn State had been able to tie this thing up, then you have a choice. Do you want to tie it and play for overtime, or do you want to be ballsy and do you want to try and put this thing away in regulation? But instead, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot with the potential for any of those opportunities early in the fourth quarter, because points are at a premium. And these are the decisions that drive me absolutely nuts. And the math just doesn't add up sometimes. So I was perplexed on that one.
I mean, I'm always, when it comes to analytics, I probably know too much, but it's a philosophical approach in the sense of, like, I mean, the points are at a premium. And I think when the idea is, if you don't get it, or if you don't get it, you have enough time to kind of set the tables and just kick a field goal and get it back into a normal possession game, and then have to go for a 2-point situation again to win eventually, right? There's always like the hypotheticals of the safe situations, but never really the hypotheticals of the gutsy decisions to, like, win a game, or like what's going to happen if it comes down to this. It's always to play for a tie. So when you start looking at analytics from evidence of winning, or like what actually happens when, like, say we don't convert and how many times you have to get the ball back, when you look at it from that standpoint, those decisions make a little more sense. You don't have to agree with them, but I think the math is a little bit different. I think if you're just looking at 2 different frameworks versus like how you want to approach the thing with analytics. And that's just me. Shout out to Sam Schwarstein, just on the analytics thing from game theory standpoint, right? Like on how you're approaching stuff on 3rd, 4th down and going for it on 2 points or 4th down. Like, I think that's just a deeper conversation, but I understand the disagreement.
I understand there's a little more the analytical approach in terms of the percentage chance to get those points and the amount of opportunities you would have to potentially score the remainder of the game. But here's the truth of the matter. Penn State gets another touchdown with Trey Wallace. Then they kick a PAT. So now you're down 45-37. Again, you put yourself in a situation by going for it for 2 early in the fourth quarter and then trying to mount a comeback that, say Drew Aller had not thrown that interception there to seal the game basically for Oregon. Had Penn State gone down and scored, they would have had to have gone for 2 and made it to have tied the game. If you kick the PAT, see where I'm going with this?
No, I do understand.
And I'm not coming at you about this.
It's a decision. It's a decision
going on for 10 years.
It's a decision that coaches make. But like I would say that if you can look at the analytical decisions that Dan Gable makes for the Detroit Lions, they make the same exact decisions when it comes down to like fourth down at the end of games and things. And he's been criticized for making those calls, and he's also been rewarded for being the number one of the top teams in the NFL based on their aggressive approach and like how they do things. So I just there's risk rewards to everything. And I think if it's the bid that you're going to make, I'm more of the aggressive. I like going for it on fourth down. I like going for it for 2. It makes the defense have to prepare, and it just keeps you in the standpoint of like, it's on us to do X, Y, and Z. Because who's to say that you make it and a field goal kicker shanks it? Like, there's nothing that's just purely safe in football. I know we like to think it when we go through the different scripts of like, hey, if this happens, this is going to happen. But like, no one takes account a Marcus Allen jumping over and blocking a field goal, right? Like, but we want to count that as automatic when it's not necessarily an automatic play. So I just say like adjust the unpredictables to everything, right? Because everything else isn't just static and predictable, and then these things are unpredictable. It's like everything's unpredictable. So when you start looking at it from that standpoint, I think the decisions aren't as apples and apples. Yeah, they just get a little different. That's all.
I understand what you're saying. And again, also Ryan Barker missed a field goal. So there's 3 points that also could have changed your thinking potentially in how you call this game. But still, points left on the field and what turned into a track meet. And that was not the type of game I was expecting today.
We were able to keep up though. So that gives me, again, there was a level of us being able to keep up. That's always my concern, is if a team jumps out on us early from an athletic standpoint, are we able to keep the game competitive, aesthetically pleasing, all those things? And we were able to do that. And with the feeling that, hey, we can win this thing. Like the way Drew is moving in the pocket, the way he's being able to make all the different throws. I'm just having some true weapons that, like their Johnson got the ball and was making plays like that.
Tez Johnson for Oregon.
Tez Johnson, yeah. Like, I mean, those one-touch guys, man. They just got to make sure we get some of those and get the ball in the hands of some of our one-touch guys.
A couple of those guys would be great. For Penn State defensively, was it just the too many talented players for Oregon? Was it a speed thing? Was it the way it was called?
It's hard to cover. It's hard to cover speed, man. That's what I keep saying. Speed brings opportunities. Those dudes are making some nice plays. I didn't see like these like Penn State just like quitting. Like they were playing. Dudes making.
They certainly weren't quitting. No.
I'm just saying like those guys were making plays, and on top of that, they were having yak plays. Like they were catching the ball, making guys miss. It wasn't like catches and tackles immediately. Like that's the one thing we can't let happen is the leaky yards after receptions. Because that's when Ted Johnson was really getting off, like cutting back on linebackers, having those little hole shots, and taking into a track meet, and limiting the explosive runs is also another thing, regardless of the actual outcome. But I think that just goes into how defensive coordinators call the game, how guys play, and all that good stuff. But yeah, limiting the explosives is the key. But I mean, when you're playing an explosive team, you have to weather that storm. I would like to see another turnover of some sort, but that's the creme de la creme right there. So
Penn State's defense came away with 6 tackles for loss, no sacks on the day. Credit to Oregon. They made it very clear from the opening drive when they were going to run the football, they were going to run the ball at Abdul Carter. And that worked in that you just put him on his heels. You put him in a phone booth amongst a lot of different blockers, takes away his ability to be effective. The Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I personally love the eye tape that he had, Big Ten bully. Abdul Carter is as advertised, and he made a critical play there in the fourth quarter to give Penn State a chance to go down and get that final score that the Nittany Lions put on the board. If he doesn't make that play sideline to sideline to go make the tackle in space, Penn State doesn't really have that opportunity and get Oregon off the field. So Abdul Carter doing as much as he could, but I thought what Oregon ultimately was able to do offensively in this game was just outstanding. And overall, you look at the stats, Penn State held Oregon to roughly 4.5 yards per carry. Penn State was about 8.5 yards per carry to end the game. So Penn State puts up some significant numbers that Yes, you've seen them do that against inferior competition. Hell, we just saw it last week against Maryland, and Maryland is not Oregon by any stretch of the imagination. You hung 44 on them, but there's still examples through this year where Penn State has struggled to score points. So that was a concern of mine when Oregon jumped out 28-10. I'm like, does Penn State have the horsepower to do this? Again, credit to this offensive line, the way that they played. They really made some space for Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. One thing I was thinking, and I'm curious how you feel about this, when Katron was dinged up, did you want to see Corey Smith?
Uh,
Here's a better question. Would that have made a difference?
I don't think so. I think the guys they were having some productive touches, and no, I don't think Corey makes that big of a difference in that game. But he's been having great showings when he's been getting in there. It's just wait your turn.
Yeah. Well, I'm personally extremely proud of the way this Penn State football team played, and you and I always talk about it's the manner in which you win and lose these games. Had this been a blowout, you would have felt really different in this time after the game, processing everything. But no matter where Penn State lands in terms of the seeding now for the first round of the college football playoff, you feel very confident about what Penn State is able to do, because you showed that if you can take care of the ball better and you stay committed to the running game, you do have to make some plays in the passing game, and Drew Aller has shown the ability to do that. Get a few stops critically on defense. Like, this is not the best defensive performance we've seen all year from Penn State, but it's clearly the best offense you saw this entire season by a good margin. I think there's a big gap between what Oregon and Ohio State are offensively, which is incredible to think. Penn State has a chance. They have a puncher's chance, and it just depends on what that pathway is going to be, and we're going to have to see what that looks like on Sunday afternoon when that all gets clarified. But I personally feel optimistic about where Penn State can go from here. What do you think?
Very optimistic. I think this was a great showing going into the playoffs. And if anything, have a boost of confidence in just terms of how sharp we are, and anything that needs to be cleaned up, and knowing that you can play with, quote unquote, the number one team in the country, and knowing that any given time they roll the ball out in the tournament, it can be your day. Make it your day.
Penn State comes up short in the Big Ten championship game to the Oregon Ducks by a score of 45-37, but now it's time for the Nittany Lions to get ready for the 2024 college football playoff.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel, and if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.